Hello, drawing buddies. Welcome back. This week we're going to draw Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop, from pencils to inks to colors. So, let's draw. Alright, Cowboy Bebop is an anime that came out in 1998. And it's kind of the anime that made it cool to watch anime in the US. Especially, I think, after they put it on Adult Swim, and then it really blew up. And it was also one of the more affordable ones you could buy at the video stores at the time, so it helped make it easier to watch it there. So Cowboy Bebop is about the adventures of the crew of the Bebop. It takes place in the future. I'm not sure exactly what year, but we've colonized the solar system. We have jump gates to get you from planet to planet and colony to colony. And of course, crime is a problem, so you need bounty hunters. So the crew of the Bebop are bounty hunters. There's Jet Black. There's Faye Valentine, there's Ed, they got a little dog named Ein, and then of course there is Spike Spiegel, the young hotshot and main protagonist of the show. He also has a really cool ship called the Swordfish, which I've been making a 3D model of forever, but I had a catastrophic wing failure, so I had to start over. But we'll talk about that later, because it's a bit frustrating. So I've been wanting to draw Spike for a while, but anime characters I find to be a little intimidating because you have to follow a certain design language, and if you miss certain things, they don't look right, and I'm not really an anime artist, and I try to bring my own style to the drawings that I do, and I'm always worried that that won't translate to the anime character. Like if you look at the Bakugo and the Ochako that I did, I pretty much copied an anime style, but on Gojo I just kind of did my own thing and hoped for the best. And we're kind of doing that same thing here with Spike because, you know, I want it to look like I drew it. I don't want to look like I copied an anime or I copied an anime style because that's just really not the way I do things. So hopefully I pulled it off and you guys like my version of Spike here. So to prepare for this, I actually watched some Cowboy Bebop because I haven't really watched the show in probably 5 or 6 years, or before the pandemic for sure. I did see the movie a couple times recently because they put it in the theaters every year around here, up at the AMC. So 2 years ago I went to see it, and it was the dubbed version. I mean the subbed version, sorry. And this year I went to see it a few months ago, and it was the dubbed version. So I have that one slightly fresh in my head. And then for episodes, I picked up where I last watched it because Crunchyroll saved that for me, and it started on the episode with the smiling assassin with the hat, and he's kind of dressed like almost like a, you know, he's got like the frilly neck thing and the top hat and the big coat with all the weapons in it. And he's got a force field, and he really beats the hell out of Spike a few times. But of course, in the end, Spike figures out what he needs to do to take care of the problem and wins the fight. The guy, I guess he was genetically engineered to be the perfect assassin, but when they were adding modifications to him and rewriting his DNA and whatever else they were doing to him, he was regressing mentally to almost like a childlike state, and then they figured he was just too far gone to actually use, so they were just going to put him in an insane asylum and let him rot there till he dies. But of course, they did too good of a job training him, and he was able to escape, and he was going after the people who engineered him, and the people who put him away, and the people who turned him into what he was. And Spike just happened to be in the wrong place in the wrong time, and see him take out a couple people, so that put Spike on his hit list. So, yeah, that was that one. And then I watched pretty much all the way to the end. I think that was 4 more episodes. And then I watched the first 5 or 6 episodes, but I didn't get through the whole series, so I have some memory gaps on what went on there. I also watched the Netflix show when it came out, the live action one, because it had John Cho as Spike and Mufasa Shakur. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm terrible at these things. He was Jet, and he was pretty awesome at it. And I even liked the girl who played Faye. You know, you don't have to be running around and almost nothing to play the character properly. So, I mean, the fact that she was covered up didn't bother me at all. They seem to follow the anime fairly closely, but the one thing I did not like about it was they made Vicious and Julia a bigger part of the story. And they went out of their way to give Spike like a big, deep origin and showing his time in the Syndicate and things like that. And it just wasn't necessary. I mean, they made Vicious like he way overacted, and he's way too prominent. And I think he was in every episode of the Netflix thing, which was kind of weird because in the anime he's in like 3 or 4 episodes total. He's in like the 5th episode. They introduce him because Spike has to go and try to avenge the guy who brought him into the Syndicate and let him out, and he runs into Julia, and then they get away. But then he doesn't show up again until like maybe the middle, and then definitely like the last 2 episodes, his final showdown with Spike. So it was just kind of weird seeing him in every episode and trying to flesh him out more as a character. It just wasn't necessary, and that took me out of it a little. Other than that, I like the cartoony, cheesy visuals they had in it because, you're based something off cartoon. It was, like Speed Racer. I think Speed Racer is probably one of the best movies to come out in a long time. And it's when I first got my first big flat screen TV, that's the first movie I watched on it because I knew that the visuals and the colors were going to melt my brain and show me exactly, if this TV was any good at color reproduction or not. Yeah, so I like the Netflix thing, but the anime I just thought did a better job of handling the origins of people. The show just showed you what you needed to. It drops you right into the middle of what's happening. There's no real origins. It's kind of like James Gunn's Superman. They give you a quick thing. This is how long superheroes been around. This is how long Superman's been around, and bam, you're in the middle of it. You didn't have to see the rocket ship. You didn't have to see Krypton exploding. You just got into the middle of the movie. And that's pretty much what Cowboy Bebop did. In fact, if James Gunn didn't see Cowboy Bebop and it wasn't some kind of influence on his work, I would be extremely surprised, because I'm pretty sure Cowboy Bebop influenced him and guys like Josh Whedon, and people who came up around that time, because the blueprints all over Firefly and things like that. Yeah, because Firefly is all about space cowboys going around doing jobs and fighting the I forgot what they call the government in Firefly. The Alliance. And Cowboy Bebop's just a couple bounty hunters. Well, actually a team of bounty hunters going around doing their bounties, and basically the same kind of thing. Flying around a ship, doing the best they can. Something always happens to screw up their job, and they never get paid for it. So yeah, it's basically animated Firefly, but it's a little slicker and a little bit more fun. But I love Firefly, don't get me wrong. But I like Cowboy Bebop just a little bit better. Actually, a bunch of years ago, actually, well before the pandemic, I went to New York Comic Con, and they had a Firefly panel that was pretty impossible to get into, but I got in because I'm not a big fan of waiting in line, so I just kind of find ways around that if possible, and it actually worked for that one. But anyway, so the whole panel's going on, and they're talking about the future of Firefly, because back then there was actually always a potential of it coming back before Josh Whedon's fall from grace and all that other fun stuff. And Nathan Fillion, the guy who played Guy Gardner in Superman, he was Mal, Captain Mal. And he wasn't supposed to be there. And then he magically showed up, and it was like, ooh, Mal's here. But they were talking about any chance of bringing it back. And they're like, well, there probably wouldn't be a live action. But Nathan Fillion said, but what I did suggest, and what we all suggested, was, what if we did like Firefly, the animated series? And, continuing their adventures that way, and going on an animated series, which would expand the scope of it, and it'd be cheaper to make, and they could all like do the voiceovers on their own time, because one's busy shooting this project and another one's doing this project. They can't always get together to shoot live action, but they can always do their voiceovers for the animation and whatever time they can get to make it, as long as they hit the deadline. So sadly, that never happened either, but that would have been pretty damn cool. Back to the drawing. I didn't really talk about this drawing yet. As you see, it's going pretty quickly, but this hand, this foreshortening drove me crazy, and I never really was happy with it. But, it is what it is, and I got through it, and I think after this convention, I am going to spend a lot of time working on foreshortening, because it's an important skill to have, and it's also really good to not make your drawings look flat, to make them look more, dynamic and more rounded and more real, is to be able to do a good bit of foreshortening. In fact, sometimes in the pencils it looked good. Looking at the pencils coming back, there's a bunch of versions of the hand that I just shouldn't have erased. That I did anyway, because I always think I could do better. I mean, I don't hate the final version, but I definitely think I could have done a better job overall. So, that's something that I personally am going to work on. And I did some of it in the next drawing, which I'll let you know is the Incredible Hulk. It's not as extreme, but I think it came out much better. And it's a step forward, so I think I'll start adding foreshortening into most of the drawings I do from this point forward, just to help me get better at it, or to help you guys who are watching get better at it if you're watching it for the drawings. I know some of you are probably watching it for the drawings, some are watching it for my interesting commentary and takes on certain comic things and the little history that I add to the whole subject that I'm drawing, but the whole thing for me is to get better at drawing, and the talking is just a way to keep you interested. And this is also another quick drawing. I think this one's actually under a half hour. I think it's like 28 minutes, 29 minutes. And it actually would have been a lot shorter if I could have settled on that hand earlier, but I just kept redrawing it and redrawing it. And then I don't like it and I draw it again, and then I start inking and I think I draw it again. So that probably adds a good 2 or 3 minutes in this sped up version that you're watching to the actual drawing. And it seems like every drawing I've done recently has one thing that gives me a problem. The Gojo drawing, it was the hand holding up his mask. And the bride, it was just her in general. I couldn't decide on the pose or the look, so I went back and forth and drew her a few times before I ended up on something that I liked, the Silver Surfer and Galactus. There's a lot to that one, so that one took a lot of figuring out. And the same thing with Superman. So there's always one part of every drawing that just sticks it to me and gives me a hard time. So hopefully I'll start getting through these things quicker as I figure out what those problems are and work my way through them, like foreshortening. And the Hulk drawing that's coming up next week, it was his face. Apparently getting the Hulk right is hard. You can't just give him a human head. You gotta make him look a little bit like a monster and a little bit elongated. And I sort of used my favorite artist, Art Adams, as a reference for his Hulk, even though my Hulk looks nothing like his Hulk. But I looked at a bunch of pictures he drew just to get an idea how to get the monster right. I actually thought about putting the Hulk up this week since I'm going to a comic show and everything. And I figured it'd be appropriate, but then I remembered, oh, the bride that I drew last week, she was green. And the Hulk, he's green. So then it'd be 2 green characters in a row. So I figured I'd put Spike in between to break up all that green. And then I was going to do Frankenstein next. But, I mean, after the Hulk. But then, you know, Hulk is basically Marvel's Frankenstein. At least he was. Jekyll Hyde Frankenstein kind of thing. So we're going to put him off for a while. And I think the next horror one I'm going to do is probably Dracula. Punk rock Dracula. Bela Lugosi style. So that'll be fun. So I got a 3D printer, and I've been printing things, and I have all these models that I have to paint. I did Donatello, my favorite mutant turtle. I did Afro Samurai, who will actually be a fun drawing to do for the channel. I don't know if he's all that popular anymore, but I want to draw him, so it'll probably happen, because I tend to just do what I want to do and not what people tell me to do. It's a problem. But one thing that I'm excited about was doing the Swordfish 2 from Cowboy Bebop. It's a really cool ship design, and I couldn't find a really good 3D model of it, and it was driving me crazy. And then I remember that during the pandemic, there's a model company. They make these really awesome Star Wars models. They're highly detailed, and they're super cool. And they had a Swordfish that they were putting up for sale. And not only were they selling completed models, but they were also selling the STL files to print the Swordfish at home if you wanted to. Now, time out, we gotta take a little tangent on top of the tangent, because I'm pretty much done with the pencils. So now we're gonna move on to the inks, and the inks actually go really fast on this one, even though I kinda spend a lot of time on this hand again. But in fact, I'm not even finished with the hand when I'm done inking. I actually go back after I'm coloring it, and I add a few more things to his joints, because they looked way too flat for me, so I had to redo them because it drove me crazy. So you'll see that at the end. So anyway, back to the models. So I go on YouTube and I started looking for the video about the model that I knew I saw, and I did. I found out the name of the company for anybody who's interested in like a really high quality homebrew Star Wars models. They're named Merlin Models. So I was watching the Cowboy Bebop movie in the theater, and that's when it hit me. So I like, oh, I should send these guys a quick email before this movie starts and see if it's still available, because I couldn't see it on their site. So I sent them a Facebook message, actually, because I found their Facebook page. And after the movie, I checked, and they got back to me. I'm like, oh, no, we're sorry. That's not available anymore. It's like, whatever. So I wrote them back, thanks for the reply. I appreciate it. If you ever do decide to sell it again, you'll have at least one customer. And I also threw in a, by the way, you guys do great work, and if I was a little less poor, I'd be buying all those Star Wars models because they're pretty great. And then the next day, when I woke up, there was another message. Apparently the guy decided to look at my Facebook page, and he liked all the art that I put on it. And he said, hey man, your art's pretty good. And then he sent me a link. He's like, here. And he sent me the files, and he's like, just don't share them with anybody. And I said, do you want me to pay for these? Because I think they were selling for like 60 or 70 bucks. He's like, no, just don't share it. And he's like, but someday I might ask you to draw something for one of our Star Wars models. I said, that's not a problem. I'd be more than happy to do that for you. They haven't asked me yet, but if they ever do, I'll be glad to do it, Merlin Models. So then I got it almost finished. I got it all painted up, and I was ready to work on it, but the way I attached the wings was I used plugs that were printed resin. And the plugs broke off, and the wings fell off. And I just could not get them on properly. And plus the canopy never fit right. And so I figured they might have given me a earlier version of the model. And when I posted the picture of it almost finished, one of the guys that works for it comes like, hey, I know that model. And I chatted with him a little bit and told him, thank you guys for, letting me have this and whatnot. And then since I had the catastrophic wing failure and I had to start over again, which it's a lot of resin, by the way, I said, just out of curiosity, because can you send me the newest files you have? Because I'm pretty sure you gave me some older ones, and I sent him like how the things fit and everything. He's like, yeah, mine don't fit like that. So he actually was very nice, and he sent me the newer files. So I really owe them a lot, because they didn't have to do any of that. And it just goes to show you that there's still some good people out there, and in all the different communities, whether it's the art or the modeling community, there's always some good people out there who are always willing to help out somebody else who's interested in the same craft. And in fact, I got to send that guy a message when I'm done with this video, because I never actually told him that I printed them and that they worked out much better. So that's something I'm going to be working on after the convention this weekend. I'm going to get that thing done first. And then I'm going to move on to Afro Samurai. And then I'm going to do the Rocketeer. And then I'm going to do Donatello. And then I'm going to do Electra. And then I'll think of something else to print. Yeah, so if you guys think that would be a fun kind of video you want to watch, let me know, because I think I'm going to get a GoPro soon. I'm going to borrow one from a friend and use it for some other things. But if you want to see it, I'll record myself putting these models together and painting them. It's actually kind of fun. And I watched some videos of that stuff. I don't know if mine will be as good as theirs, but I'm pretty sure I haven't seen a video of anybody putting a swordfish together. So back to Cowboy Bebop, because that was a long tangent. I'm sorry about that, but it starts out, the first episode is just Jet and Spike. There's no Faye yet, there's no Ed, there's no Ein. And it's a simple intro story, that they get a bounty, they go after the guy, they go after the girl. The guy's selling some kind of drug called Red Eye. You spray it in your eye and it gives you like superhuman madness, and I guess it's worth a lot of money, and the guy's like a huge bounty, and they go after him. And of course they get away. The girl ends up killing the guy. Their ship gets blown up in space. Spike doesn't get the bounty, but it's a good job of showing you who they are. There's a little bit of a flashback that shows Spike having a nightmare, some gunfire and some of his syndicate time, but it's like only a few seconds, and not like they did in the Netflix thing where they spend like a whole episode on that stuff. I don't even think they definitely didn't show Vicious. So, and then I think it's like the third episode or something, they finally introduce Faye. They're in a casino, and she owes the casino a lot of money, so they use her to get some chip. that has a microchip in it. That's some other kind of thing they need for some gambling thing. So they tell Faye if she gets that for them that they will erase her debt, so she confuses Spike with the guy who has the chip. Spike's winning. He's way up, and then he loses the last hand because Faye cheats. And Spike's like, whatever, because he's a very lackadaisical, whatever happens, happens kind of guy. And he's like, I'll just keep this last chip as a souvenir. And that's the one she thinks she needs. So she's like, hey, come back here. And of course, Spike bumps into the guy who had the chip, and the chips fall on the floor. They both grab the wrong one, and eventually, I don't remember. But turns out the chip ends up being useless because some kind of gunfire thing, and everybody dies in the casino. And Faye doesn't get her debt erased, so she's still in debt. And then we don't see her again. And then they move on. And the one thing they mention in this episode that I'm surprised they never went back to, but it's only 23 episodes and they have a story to tell, so I get it. But they mention that Spike has almost a photographic memory. And Jet tells him, he's like, don't go doing too good out there gambling or they're going to kick us out of the place. And Spike's like, whatever, I'll do my best. So basically, he's some kind of nasty gambler because, like, he could count cards or whatever. And when they show him, he's up a lot. And if Faye didn't cheat, he would have won a lot of money. And they're always complaining how they're broke and they can't afford food and they don't have this. And it just surprises me that they don't take a couple Yulongs, as they call their dollars, and go to a casino every once in a while and just have Spike win a few $1,000s so they could actually eat or something or fuel up the ships. But they don't, and it's pretty much dropped after that. And then a couple episodes later, maybe it's the next episode, on another mission they screw up and they don't get paid for, or they do the right thing and they don't get paid for it. They run into Faye again. She's kind of floating in space with no fuel and no food. And like, we can't believe it. Our dumb luck running into her again. And at the end of that episode, she just kind of invites herself to join the crew. And Spike's like, if there's 3 things I hate, Jet, it's women, dogs, and kids. And now we got a woman on the crew. Because, he had problems with Julia and stuff, and that's why he's on the run, because things that happened in the syndicate with her, and they were supposed to run away together. She didn't show up. He faked his death to get out of the syndicate, and all that other fun stuff. And then after that, they end up on another mission to catch a guy who stole a thing called a data dog. But we're going to put that on pause for a second because we are done with the inks now. And we're only 22 minutes in. And now we're on to the colors. And as you can see, I go a little bit kind of like a poster on this one. Because I put my graphic design skills to use for the first time in years. Because why not? Plus it made the drawing a lot more interesting, I think. And I might do that more. Like make some comic characters look like they're covers and things like that. So... But when I do that, I'll incorporate more of the design into the video than I do this one, because I don't really show you how I get all the pieces. I just kind of throw them in there as different layers and put them together in this one. But back to the episode, the data dog. It's a guy, he has a bounty on his head for stealing a very valuable piece of tech, and it's in a suitcase. And then somebody steals the suitcase from him, and Spike's going around trying to catch everybody. And it turns out the thing in the suitcase is a dog. And there's a pet store on the plane, and they're like, this dog's pretty much useless. It's just a mutt. But it turns out some kind of programmers, they programmed information into the dog's DNA. And apparently they also made the dog super smart, because it does all kinds of things throughout the series that a normal dog wouldn't be able to do. Figures out problems and tries to, show them how to do things in ways that they don't always understand, because it's a dog and he doesn't speak. But they definitely enhanced his intelligence. And so at the end of that mission, they end up with the dog. So now Spike has a woman on the crew and a dog. So he's not happy. And then I think an episode or 2 after that, there's a hacker that hacks into some kind of satellite. And the satellite is drawing those drawings in the desert. I forgot what tribes or people did that. But there's those giant drawings in the desert of bugs and animals and people. And nobody really knows how they did it. And it turns out that... it was an ancient satellite or something, and it was lonely, and it started to draw them again. But the hacker hacked into the satellite and was talking to it. And that hacker was Ed. He's a little kid. Pretty sure it's a girl. Might be a boy. They always call him a girl, but he looks like a boy, and they're always a little bit ambiguous on what Ed is as far as that goes. But we'll say it's a girl. Because even when the episode where he meets his father's like, "Are you my son or my daughter? I don't remember." But, it's the 90s, so jokes like that were funnier back then. And so after that, Ed decides that he's going to pick the Bebop crew to help him out, because he's been listening to their chatter on the radios and stuff, and he decides that they're the people he wants to hang out with. So Ed brings them to him for another bounty. And then Ed ends up on the crew. And then Spike's like, "Jet, I can't stand having women, animals, and children around. And now we have all 3 on the crew." And that's pretty much where they leave that. But of course they all grow close and they all help each other out and they all serve the crew in their own ways. And then eventually Spike's past catches up to him. Faye actually runs into Julia. And Julia says, "If you meet Spike, tell him to meet me at wherever. He'll know where it is," which was the place they were supposed to meet when she didn't show up. So Spike goes to meet her. And they're going to go run off together, but first they got to solve the Vicious problem, because Vicious is being held captive by the Syndicate because he tried to kill the Elders. And he got away. And then Julia dies. And then Spike goes back to the ship and he's like, "Yo, I got to go take care of this." And Jet's like, "You don't owe them anything. You're free, Spike. You could just go and we don't have to look back." And Spike's like, "I know I don't have to do this, but I don't. But I have to. I want to. This is a promise I made." So Spike goes back to the final showdown, and he is a beast. He takes out tons of mob figures and other guys, and he's just going through, shooting people away, blowing up things, and basically taking out all the bad guys till he gets to Vicious. And Vicious uses a sword, and Spike uses a gun, so they have a really cool sword gunfight thing at the end. And in the end, Spike wins, and he kills Vicious. But the problem is, Spike is also mortally wounded. And at the end, when he's walking down the stairs, and he's surrounded by more police and whatnot, and they're all ready to take Spike down, Spike just puts his hand out and does a little fake shot and falls, and that's pretty much the end of Spike. Spike doesn't make it through the end of the series. But they did do a movie. I think the movie was 2001 or 2002, and the movie takes place between 2 episodes, and they wanted it to take place kind of like in a New York City kind of place, but it happens in space. So they basically land the ship and it's a city and it's some kind of parade, and some guy's gonna poison all the people, and of course they save the day. But it's a good movie too. They put it in theaters every year, so if you get a chance and you like Cowboy Bebop, look that up. And also they just put it on Crunchyroll, I believe, or you could buy it digitally. They did something with it where it's finally available, because it wasn't really easy to find a nice version of it for a while unless you went to the theater. Another great thing about Cowboy Bebop is the soundtrack. It's mostly jazz and blues, but it goes hard. The opening theme, it's called Tank, and it is like just some high energy noise jazz, and it's freaking great. And just look it up, Cowboy Bebop Tank. You'll thank me. Even if you don't like jazz, you'll like it. Here I am, I'm throwing in the design elements for the background, because, like I said, everything on this guy goes pretty quick. But yeah, the soundtrack is great. And the intro is also very iconic. It's very graphic, and it's very shadowy, and it's like a really cool update of a James Bond kind of intro. And it's very colorful, a lot of primary colors, and if you watch it, and then you watch Top Gear. If you ever watch Top Gear, the British car show, Jeremy Clarkson, Brian May, and Richard Hammond, the intro to that is pretty much a lift of Cowboy Bebop. I'm sure they had nothing to do with it. It's the designers of the show. But it's just a very, very cool homage. And there's also an orchestra that's been going around the country. I actually missed it last time I came around. I had something to do. And it's an orchestra, and they play the soundtrack over parts of the movie, and they got the full big band and the orchestra, and it's pretty darn cool. So I need to check that out one of these days when it comes around again. And yeah, here we go. We're adding the Cowboy Bebop logo to Spike. We're adding the signature, and we're pretty much done with this one. So I'd like to thank you all for joining me on the adventures of Spike Spiegel and Cowboy Bebop. Do the like, subscribe, and follow thing. I'll really appreciate that. And I will see you on the next one. Happy drawing.